My plan is bold and simple. I will walk across the world from country to country, starting from my hometown of Constanța here in Romania on the 1st of July, to raise awareness about population issues by talking to people along the way and seeking audiences with the heads of state and government of every nation that I pass through, to hopefully convince them to abandon all covert and coercive methods of population control and instead legislate a population stabilization law. The first leg of my journey is approximately 7,000 kilometers long and takes me from Romania to Bulgaria, then across the length of Turkey, across the length of Iran, across Pakistan, and into India all the way to New Delhi. It will take me about 194 days to walk this distance. I will stop in New Delhi for a few weeks to regain my strength before I move on to China, Southeast Asia, Malaysia, and Indonesia, which will be the second leg of my journey. The third leg will be the Americas, and the fourth, Africa and Europe. Enough is enough. The current international system is based on poisoning the global population into chronic infertility and premature mortality in order to control life at both ends by limiting births and increasing deaths. And this is simply unacceptable. We are not animals, we are human beings and must be treated as such. To get away with this, governments around the world cooperate with the UN system and the military-industrial complex of the US and other major nations to engineer crises that provide them with the plausible deniability they need to thin our numbers and pretend otherwise. Behind the front of these crises, governments pursue the objectives of stabilizing their populations, either numerically, by targeting the young for sterilization, or structurally, by targeting the old for early death, or both at once. They do this out of sheer desperation, and not because they are bloodthirsty maniacs. They do it because they know that mankind cannot survive the next doubling of the global population from the current 8 billion people to 16 billion, which absent brutal methods of population control would happen in just 25 years. No one can argue with the need to control population growth to stabilize our numbers and gradually reduce them to a sustainable level. What I take issue with, and everyone should take issue with, is the chemical, biological, bacteriological, economic, and psychosocial methods used to accomplish this. Methods that are being forced on us without our knowledge and consent, and that are causing untold suffering, cost about a quarter of the global GDP, and downgrade the intellectual and genetic endowment of our species. Endowments that took nature millions of years of evolution to accomplish. What God and nature took millions of years to fashion, man is destroying in just 2 centuries. For if these methods continue to be used, we will all be incapable of reproduction, as well as physically, mentally, and emotionally dysfunctional within a couple of decades, and our species may well perish as a result. We can achieve harmony with nature without destroying ourselves and before we destroy the planet. We can do it by willingly adapting a population stabilization law and enforcing it globally. This law must have 3 components. First, replacement level fertility, that is to say 2 children per woman, and no more than that until the end of times, or until we become a multi-planetary species, if that will ever happen. This will ensure that we achieve numerical stabilization of the population and the survival of our species, since every couple will simply replace itself. And this will save us from hunger, poverty, and war over dwindling resources, and from assured nuclear annihilation. Second, and you're not going to like this, but I tell you what you need to know and not what you want to hear, which is what politicians do. Required assisted dying at age 75 to 80 until the old age dependency ratio falls below 20% or 25%, depending on what a country can afford. And the old no longer pose an unbearable burden on the young. As it is, in developed nations we now have a situation where 2 taxpayers support 1 pensioner, or worse, nearly 1-to-1. In other words, the true old age dependency ratio is 50%, or in some countries close to 100%. And this ratio will only get worse, not better, since the number of the old is set to double over the next 20 to 30 years. The governments can no longer make ends meet now, and no nation will survive a situation in which 1 taxpayer has to support 1 pensioner indefinitely, or even more than 1 pensioner, which is where we are heading. So, like it or not, we have to bite the bullet and accept a limit to our lifespan and an assisted death. This will ensure the structural stabilization of the population and save us from fiscal and economic collapse and from intergenerational conflict that would send us back to social chaos and to the poverty trap which took our forefathers 10,000 years of suffering to escape. And third and last, optimal population levels as calculated by the Overshoot Index, which considered every country's landmass and natural resources and worked out the number of people that can be supported sustainably in every country with its own resources. Thus, without consuming the non-renewable resources of future generations and leaving behind a denuded planet for our children that they will find impossible to live on. This will ensure a state of harmony between man and nature, give us universal prosperity, and the elbow room to continue to evolve. And it will save us from environmental destruction and the other species that inhabit this planet from the 6th mass extinction that we are now causing. Now that you know the seriousness of our predicament and that our very survival is at stake, you can begin to understand that my walk around the world is not such a crazy idea after all. What would be crazy is to continue to pretend that all is well, to do nothing, and race towards our own demise. If we act now, we can achieve a peaceful transition from covert, criminal and immoral to overt, legal and ethical methods of population control. I hope you will support me as I am once again risking my life and abandoning all comfort to be the agent of change and the torchbearer of truth that the world needs so badly at this time.